Welcome back to another episode of Talk Dead to Me, the only Walking Dead podcast with the guts to start at Season 10. I'm your host, Johnny Odell. I'm the social media manager for The Walking Dead. And with me, as always, Alexandra August. She is our podcast producer. Alexandra, how are you?
I am doing pretty well. I'm producing a podcast as we speak.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're not going to be really invested in this one at all. That's fine. I can keep it. I can take it solo now that Woody's not here. He's gone in the abyss of parenthood.
His baby ate him.
His baby ate him. Wow, that's a headline. Now that's a headline.
He ate his neighbors. His baby ate him. That is how nature works.
We are continuing Talk Dead to Me Reanimated. Basically, we're watching iconic episodes with old cast members. This week, we have moved into Season 6, and we are going to be covering JSS. This is Episode 2, came out on October 18th, 2015, directed by Jennifer Lynn, written by Seth Hoffman, and I am so excited to cover this episode. It might be my favorite from Season 6.
I don't know if it's my favorite from Season 6, but I really enjoyed it. And I would never stop thinking and I feel like I've learned for sure now it's never going to leave my brain what JSS stands for, because for some reason I only ever think about it like once a year and then I'm like, wait, juries stand soon.
It's just shoot salmon.
Oh, yes. Wait, no, it's not. No, just survive somehow, and it's never going to leave my brain.
It never should. Alexandra, what can the good folks expect from this week's episode?
Well, we got a pretty exciting episode, if you ask me. We're going to start off with winners and losers. Then we're going to scoot right on over to Dunked On, which we haven't done in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited. And then we've got some more healthy Apocatips for you guys to learn from, and a special guest, Anne Mahoney, played Olivia, the kindest, sweetest food manager in the Apocalypse that the Apocalypse has ever seen. And then we're gonna finish it all up with some stray arrows. And I had a lot of stray arrows this week, Johnny.
All right, so in this week's episode, obviously, we had the wolves attack Alexandria. There was also some drama with Jesse and the people around her. We got Morgan back in his I don't want to kill mode. And all sorts of bloodshed happened. And honestly, Erin was to blame for all of it. We'll get to that. Anyway, Jesse's my winner this week because first of all, she is now a single mom after Rick got her husband killed. He was a terrible person, so he was beating her. So great, Pete's gone. So Jesse's now a single mom, forced to live with her shitbag son, Ron, and her, sort of measly son, Sam. So when the wolves attack, Jesse immediately grabs some scissors and just defends her house, her family, and she takes out all the frustration of losing her husband and all the crazy shit that's been happening and just pile drives it into this woman's chest for dead. She's just dead, damn it. And then Ron is at the doorstep watching his mom completely destroy another person and is like, okay, maybe I won't argue with her anymore because Jesus Christ.
Ron learned. This was a learning episode for Ron. He learned to be afraid of his mom, and he learned to respect Carl.
My loser this week is Morgan. Morgan has been trying to preach his whole, peace and love. Hey, man, let's just, not kill. Why don't we educate? Why don't we do that? Carol said, fuck that. I'm killing everyone. Everyone Morgan tries to save, they just get completely demolished. And because he refuses to kill Owen,
he is also responsible for some of this.
He definitely is. And I'm glad that you met with Eastman, which, happens a little later in the season, and, had the heart-to-heart with his goat Tabitha. But Morgan, big loser. His philosophy is not catching on.
He tries to. You can tell Morgan is just like, damn it, God, everybody I try not to kill is either a jerk or dead.
Yeah. And early Dunked On when he's like, we don't have to kill. And Carol's like, of course we do. Are you fucking kidding me?
What are
you
serious?
Talking about? These people just slaughtered half of us.
I just looked out my window and some lady got beaten in the head with a sledgehammer. What is... Here, take a gun. My goodness, shut up.
Let's be honest. Carol shed no tears for the woman who was smoking, who she scolded for smoking.
I don't think the tears are... Yeah, you're right. The tears are not necessarily for the people who died. The tears are just, maybe for the people that Carol killed. I don't know.
Alexander, who are your winners and losers this week?
I would say my winners this week were any remaining Alexandria realtors. Because we haven't spent a ton of time in Alexandria since we started Reanimated, which means I haven't seen Alexandria in several years,
Been a
and
minute.
I forgot or not. I haven't seen like
Wait, years? You haven't seen it in several years?
No. I haven't seen like this Virgin Alexandra in a couple of years. And so like half the time I'm like, oh, this is an incredible scene. This is tense. And somebody's dying or somebody's fighting. Ooh, marble countertop. That's cute. I like that. Like, and then then you're like, oh, Carol's sad. Oh, Carol's in a disguise and she's writing a W on her forehead and blood. Ooh, stands for the. Ooh, I like that brick facade too. That's really cute. Oh, she just shot a woman in the doorway. I like that porch. Like,
I need like HBO and HGTV we'll call it HBTV. I need them to combine and make that show where it's commenting, making observations on home decor while also avoiding getting stabbed in the neck.
Yeah, like somebody actually does get like stabbed in the neck, and there's this really like harrowing moment where somebody comes to terms with having either killed someone or their loved one dying, and then all of a sudden it's like the Property Brothers, and they're showing you how to make the island that it all happened on.
Who was your loser this week?
Going a little bit back to our previous discussion, my losers this week were Carol and Morgan tied because they both tried. Both of them tried so hard this episode at just different things, just being, and they both kind of lost.
Yeah, I guess she probably took like a mental L because all these bodies stack up, and we've seen it in season 10 still reverberating.
This is definitely a mental L, and also too, it's the beginning of the season. They've just figured out. Rick has finally woken up the residents of Alexandria to like, hi, hello, you live in the apocalypse, like fucking deal with it. And then that one guy dies and he kills that abusive husband. That's the end of season 5 and the beginning. Yeah, it kills Pete. And then this is the beginning of season 6 where, you guys live in the apocalypse and it's bad. And, problems are arising. This isn't this is the beginning of an arc, not the end of one. So it's not, I mean, Aaron takes a mental L too.
Aaron takes all the L's because he's the one who accidentally left those photos in the wild, and these wolves found them, and that's how they located Alexandria. I mean, Aaron's the biggest loser of the episode, probably.
Kind of, yeah. And
he gets over it like by the next episode, but still.
Probably.
We are going to get into one of our favorite segments. It was gone for a few weeks. Now it's back. Dunked On.
Ooh, dunked
All right,
on.
why don't you start us off with your dunked on?
My dunked on this week is Deanna on herself. First of all, I love Tova Feldsha. And I forgot how much I liked Deanna. There's just such an unexpected. There's not a lot of middle-aged, small, very intellectual women in apocalypse culture. Like it's usually you are either like in your mid-20s because you have to run a lot and you have to be somewhat athletic, or you are older and you're evil. I don't know. There's just I don't see that character roaming around The Night of the Living Dead or 28 Days Later. And so I just enjoyed her whole presence. I like that she was a gender flip from the comics.
Right.
Yeah, I liked her so much. And this was, and seeing her basically look at the situation, she's like, I am not going to be any help in there. People are going to try and save me because people like me. I don't know. She's like, I need to stay out here and just sit quietly and trust me, it's best for everyone. And she says it with such nobility that she's just like, listen, I have nothing to offer and I'm just going to slow you down. So I'm going to sit in this truck, just go, thank you. Let's move on.
So wait, did she dunk on herself?
Yeah, she basically was like, hi, hello, I am useless in this capacity. I am going to sit myself out. I am giving myself a timeout, but it is a noble timeout because I'm putting myself before the community. Or I'm putting my community before myself.
My dunked on this week is anyone who messed with Carol because they got. I mean, everybody got. And I really loved the directing in this episode. It was directed by Jennifer Lynch, who, aside from other Walking Dead episodes like Spend, she directed American Horror Story, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of it is like superhero stuff and supernatural stuff. It was just like Carol running up to a porch. People come out and they're like, oh shit. And then she just caps them. But it just all happens like while the camera's behind her. Like it wasn't any like creative cuts. Like it was just...
You felt like you were in that neighborhood. Like you felt you were there. Like you were like, oh my God, this feels like a neighborhood that I have been in and lived in. You didn't have that typical distance that you get on, and I would honestly say like on a superhero show or something that you can say, or you're like, oh, that's a good 5, 6, 7 realities over to like 7 universes over from mine. Whereas like
Right.
The Walking Dead, and The Walking Dead's really good at occupying the space. The Walking Dead is like one universe next door. There's one
For
little
sure.
change in a couple of different elements, and The Walking Dead happens. We're really close in a lot of ways, and this really, you felt very grounded in that.
And low-key dunked on is Holly, who was a pretty big character. Well, not big, but medium character in the comics, had like a relationship with Abraham. She's the person that Abraham leaves Rosita for. And, she crashes her car into the sanctuary, has like a really big all-out war, arc and everything. But here, they had mentioned her a few times before this. And then in this episode, she's just a prop for Denise not to revive. And then it's a lesson for Denise, like, hey, it's okay. Sometimes you can't save them all, but at least you tried. So there goes Holly, never to be heard from or seen from again. Just kind of came into from the comics to the show, and she's gone. All right, now we're going to go on to one of our favorite segments. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I did forget to put in the fun Apocatips music last week, but I'm just doing that to make sure you guys are paying attention. I know. So let's kick it off with this week's Apocatips. Alexander, what's your Apocatip for this week?
My Apocatip for this week is if you have a gated community in the apocalypse, expect visitors and plan accordingly. I
yes.
really I love the attitude in Alexandria. I love it. They're positive. They are supportive of one another. They're a good team. But the defense needed some work, and we saw that today. We saw that in spades today. So yeah, don't be like Alexandria.
My Apocatip this week is if a guy who just helped slaughter half the town begs for his life and he's just sitting there on the ground, just shoot him.
Yeah.
He can't be reformed. He's not your friend. Yeah. And I'm glad that, Carl learned a lesson. He took a second and almost got by this guy and eventually capped him. And Ron just stood there because Ron sucks.
Carl is a professional and Ron is just like, in terms of like teenagerdom, Carl is the team that you would actually like. You'd be like, okay, I could spend some time with you. And Ron is just like, oh, I can't wait till that kid goes to his room.
Yeah, go to your room, Ron. And by room, we mean hell. Yeah, bonus Apocatip. If you're trying to attack someone in their own home, maybe don't corner them in the armory where into a rack of guns. Maybe not the best choice because she will use that against you very quickly.
Also, if you're gonna invade a community that has more people than you do, and you don't know what the inside totally looks like, don't do it in fucking broad daylight.
Yeah.
Maybe wait till it's nighttime, you morons.
Yeah, well, these people are savages. There is no rule. There's no rhyme or reason to these people. They're all terrible. You know who's not terrible, Alexandra? Our next guest, Anne Mahoney. She played Olivia on The Walking Dead from seasons 5 through 7. I had such a delightful time talking to her, and I can't wait for you to hear this. Past Johnny, why don't we hear it? Our guest this week is the fantastic actress who played Olivia in The Walking Dead. You also know her from Bad Moms, Sun Records, Logan Lucky, so many great things. Anne Mahoney, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be doing something acting related.
Yes, absolutely. You said before that you've actually been doing some homeschooling during the quarantine?
Yes.
What's that been like?
Well, I have great kids. I'm really fortunate, but I have a sixth grader, soon to be seventh grader, and a first grader, soon to be second grader. And the sixth grade math is a lot for me.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's kind of crazy. All these parents are just kind of expected to be teachers. I know they have like the Zoom calls with the actual teachers, but still, that's like, I don't know. That must be nuts. I didn't
do well in sixth grade math the first time around. So,
so teaching it is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
How else have you been doing in quarantine? How have you been adjusting to life and everything?
Well, we're pretty good. New Orleans is where I live full time. Yeah. And so we got hit pretty hard. And my parents actually lived in an assisted living place. So that was a little scary.
That is scary.
But they're good. They came out without getting it. We got them out of there kind of early on. So everybody I know is healthy. So
that is so good. I've heard it can be a nightmare in those places at this point right now. They're all locked down. No one can visit them. So that's great that you got them out.
Yep.
Fantastic. So we're going to get into your background. So you're born in Rochester, New York, and then but kind of grew up in New Orleans, right?
Yeah, my dad actually was on the road with his band when my mom got pregnant with me and I was baby too. And that was at the point at which my dad said, maybe I should get my master's degree. He's a jazz musician and composer.
Cool.
So he went to Eastman and got his master's there. And then the first job he was offered out of graduate school was as the head of the jazz program at Loyola University in New Orleans, which is why we moved there when I was 2 years old. So,
wow, that's fantastic. Have you lived there your entire life? You said you're there now.
Yeah, my entire life except for when I went away to school in graduate school, and I wouldn't live anywhere else. I love it.
Yeah. So you actually got started acting at a pretty early age, right?
Yeah, I was 10 when I did my first play.
Oh my gosh. So, okay. Was that in school, or was that like local theater, or?
It was actually at Loyola University, which funny enough, I adjunct teach acting there now. And that's where my dad teaches. Basically, they said, don't you have 3 kids? And my dad said, yeah. And they're like, don't they sing? They were doing Fiddler on the Roof. And he was like, yeah, they sing. And they're like, doesn't your daughter dance? They were like, yeah. So my first production was with all these college kids, production of Fiddler on the Roof. I'd done ballet since I was 4 years old. So I'd been on stage since I was 4, but my first play was at 10 years old and I got hooked.
I also saw something where you moved to New York at one point. Is that right? It was like a month before 9/11?
18 days, yeah.
What's your story around that?
So I got my master's in acting at University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut, where I studied the Suzuki method of actor training, which is a modern Japanese technique drawn from kind of ancient kabuki martial arts. It's pretty intense training method.
Wow.
So I'm a classically trained theater actress. That was kind of I wanted to go to Broadway. Broadway was where I wanted to be. And so I worked that summer at the Berkshire Theater Festival on stage there. And then I got my equity card and I moved to New York City 18 days before 9/11. And I had just started kind of pounding the pavement, doing what we call equity principal auditions, which are, for the big theaters, trying to get myself, my first little foot in the door on Broadway after all those years of training. And then 9/11 happened and everything stopped. Just everything came to a complete halt. Yeah. So the morning of, I woke up because I lived right by the Prospect Expressway in Sunset Park in Brooklyn. Okay. And the Prospect Expressway goes right into Manhattan. So I woke up because of just this endless kind of parade of sirens. And I remember saying to myself, well, there's one heck of a fire in the neighborhood, right? Yeah. And I got up and I went downstairs to the little place where we did our laundry, and they had like a place where you could buy orange juice, little convenience store. And I went in there and the guy said, did you hear 2 planes crashed outside of the World Trade Center? And I was like, ooh, that sounds awful, right? There's probably a lot of people that have died. And then I went upstairs and turned on the television, and it was like the terrorism thing was going about. So that was the beginning of my auspicious career as an actress in New York City.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Yeah. I always wonder what it's like, for the people who are actually in the city, like how did they, like just reacting to that in real time? That's wild. So when did you get, so you were doing theater, and then when did you get started like having like roles in like TV shows and movies?
It kind of happened by accident. I ended up working in World Trade Center relief with victims of the World Trade Center as a social worker without a degree. Yeah, that was deep and intense. Yeah. And then I moved back to my home in New Orleans in 2003. You know how the rest of that story goes, because in 2005 was Hurricane Katrina.
Oh my gosh.
So my house drowned in that. But before
No way.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, both those things. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, like disaster is like following you or something.
I know, but also wonderful things follow me. So I'm just waiting for the next wonderful thing. Since I'm getting to do a pandemic too, I'm like, well, every time some big tragedy happens, some major beautiful shift in my life ends up happening. So I'm ready. I'm ready
for something amazing is about to happen.
It's right. I believe that. So yeah, actually I was doing a play in New Orleans, and a friend of mine that was in the play with me said, you should do film and television acting. So there had been a whole bunch of tax credits that had been passed in Louisiana. I think it was in 2001 or two. And I said, well, I mean, I'm a classically trained theater actress. I mean, I don't know if I could. I'm kind of weird looking and I'm not skinny. And she was like, you should do film and television acting. Just trust me. So she invited her agent to come to the play. And the agent was like, signed me immediately. And I got the very first thing I auditioned for.
Oh my gosh.
So that was how that started. And then it was a full, like it wasn't an overnight success. It was a full 10 years from then before I booked Walking Dead.
Wow. That's incredible. That's really great. I'm going to get into Walking Dead in a second. I want to talk about that. You were saying with Katrina, with your house, what did you do? Like, how did you move on from that? That's like everyone's worst fear is something terrible happening to their house, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or kids,
Well, I was fortunate at the time that happened. I did not have children. My husband and I got married in 2003. So this was 2005. It was actually the summer before we had, I think it was Hurricane Ivan, and we evacuated, and that was a nightmare, but it was actually a huge blessing because the city realized how unprepared we actually were for a real hurricane. So they implemented what's called the contraflow, which is all roads go out when a hurricane starts, so that when we evacuated the next time, the traffic wouldn't get stopped and people would run out of gas. So we weren't here for it. We evacuated. I remember because I had just booked my first recurring role, if it had gotten picked up, in a show called Scarlet that was supposed to shoot the Monday after Katrina hit.
Wow.
And and then I had like an audition that I had to come back for. I had just booked a play too. And I packed like a suitcase, we took our cat and that was it. And we never came home.
Wow.
We had 7 feet of water in our house for 2.5 months.
Oh my gosh.
So, and our house was 3 feet off the ground. So it was 10 feet of water in our neighborhood for like 2.5 months. So yeah, that's my Katrina story. And, I have to be honest about it. Of course, the thing that was the most disconcerting was moving away from New Orleans, because it's my home and it's my people, it's my culture at this point. And then, the stuff was it was a little bit of a relief to lose all the things. And then we lived in Asheville, North Carolina for about 6 years. And then we moved back to New Orleans in 2011. So it was tough, but I also I feel fortunate that I didn't have children at that point. Because I can't imagine. I had friends who had small children at that point who they had to explain to, like, the train set, like everything's gone, Johnny, and so yeah, having kids during the pandemic is one thing, but we still have our house. We have our house and our family. And
so if they made like a sort of like a movie about your life, it would kind of be like Forrest Gump, where you could just go from one major world event to one major personal, thing, and then to another.
That's funny. Yeah. I never thought of it. Whenever I repeat this story too, I have a couple of friends who've been dear friends of mine my whole life, who we come in and out of touch with one another. We went to undergraduate school together. And I just finally, as the pandemic was unfolding, I was kind of recounting to them some of the Katrina stuff that I thought they knew and they didn't know. I guess I don't talk about it. It's just kind of like, that's my life, right? Yeah.
Just
happy
just
to be
a major
alive.
Flood, a catastrophe. In my hometown.
Happy to be alive,
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's move on to Walking Dead. How, we'll just start from the basics. How did you get booked on that show?
So one of the first people I met when I made my way into the film industry, back when I started in it, which was around 2004, and I mean, I've been training for years. I feel like I have to say that because it didn't just happen overnight. It was quite a process.
You don't have to justify anything. Your career stands for itself.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was fortunate enough to where at the time that I started acting in film and television, you could still meet casting directors before you walked in the door to audition for them. And I had this incredible agent who any New Orleans actor, worth their salt will be like Claudia Spiker. They will say her name. She passed in 2014 unexpectedly. And she was incredible. And Lisa Mae Fincannon from Fincannon and Associates Casting, which is out of North Carolina, actually, were in town in New Orleans trying to meet the actors because these tax credits had come to Louisiana. And Claudia got me a meeting with Lisa Mae Fincannon. And I went and got to meet her and sit down with her, and she was looking at my resume. She got my resume because my resume was primarily theater, but she knew, Long Wharf Theater was a big deal, and the Berkshire Theater Fest was a big deal, and that I had done an off-Broadway play that won an Obie was a big deal. Those were things that she understood. So she was the one who really auditioned me a bunch in the beginning. And she is the person who got the casting breakdown with Olivia on it 10 years later.
Oh my gosh.
And she looked at that role and she said, this is Anne Mahoney. This is it for Anne Mahoney. Like, I just know that this is, and it's not that she didn't audition other people. She did lots and lots of other people. Really? But she, called my agent and just said, we got to have Anne put this on tape. Of course, her name was Julia and not Olivia. Mm-hmm. And it was dummy sides.
Right.
Right. So this because you've done these interviews before. And
but it's okay. I love hearing about it.
Yeah. It was this girl who, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this. I signed an NDA and maybe they reuse these sides. So I'm not going to say what it was, but it was actually really funny. Oh. And I thought, so this isn't a post-apocalyptic show. I had not seen the show. I had read the comic book because I had small children. My daughter was 1.5 years at this point. My son was 6. Mm-hmm. And so I was watching the show, trying to do my research, get a feeling for it. And I thought, this is so funny, though. So it was clear to me that whoever this person was, she needed to be able to deliver a snarky or a funny line in the midst of some pretty harsh circumstances. Yeah. So that's how I crafted that audition. And I was cast directly from tape. I had no callback. I just turned in the tape of the monologue and they cast me. And I was at the symphony with my mom. It was a Friday night. We were at the Louisiana Symphony. And I came out at the intermission, which was at 9:30 or something. And I had like 100 phone calls from my agent. Right. And I said, I think something's going down, because it's 9:30 on a Friday. So I called them and they said, you booked that role on Walking Dead. And I remember my mom saying to me, we are Christians, not those asshole kinds.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, I just feel like it very, very quickly sums up the things that I do and do not believe Jesus was. And I don't judge people, and I don't think you're going to hell if you don't believe what I believe, and you can marry who you want and love who you want, all that stuff. So she just said to me, she said, well, you see, Anne, when God works in your life, it's like gangbusters. He's not just going to put you on any old show. He's going to put you on the most popular show on television. Right. And I was like, so then I was on set by Sunday. This was Friday. I left. I was in Atlanta by Sunday. I didn't learn the name of my character until I was in my costume fitting with Yulin, who was the costume designer at that point. Yeah. And she was your character does this and your character is very trustworthy. And this is Olivia. I'm like, Olivia. Okay, that's her name. All right.
Olivia. Got it. Okay. And she's like, did you not know that?
I didn't know it. I didn't know her name.
That's crazy.
I didn't know how, they didn't tell me, any kind of trajectory at that point. And I'm a person who I have notebook after notebook of homework that I do on my characters, research and stuff. And so I was frantic because I was going to be starting on Tuesday and I knew nothing. So that was the beginning of it. And then I got to sit down with Scott Gimple and Greg Nicotero. They had a meeting with me. And they kind of gave me their feeling of their background of who Olivia was before she came to Alexandria. So I'm frantically writing that down. So I'm going to expound on that later in my notebook. And and then, Scott was like, we just watched. I said, so I'm amazed that you didn't want to call back because I've heard that people do audition for you guys a bunch. They're like, yeah, we just watched a reel. We figured you could probably do whatever we needed you to do. And I was like, oh. And then they were talking to me about the apocalypse. And I'm like, yeah, I was in New York for 9/11 and in New Orleans for Katrina. And I'm not saying I got it, but I feel like I have a sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. So, that must be challenging to not have that much preparation on your character. You said right on set on Sunday. So do you just have to wing it and then you figure it out as you go? I mean, I know they gave you some exposition on your character. How did you evolve Olivia in your head, I guess?
Well, the first thing that was important to me was to understand her job, because so much of us, especially in the apocalypse, you you really have to, it's kind of like the pandemic. It's, we're all trying in this time when, especially when our regular jobs are not happening, we're trying to figure out how to kind of define ourselves and our time.
Right.
And so for me, the first thing that I needed to understand about Olivia were my 2 jobs. And so that's where I centered most of my homework around in the beginning, which was she would obviously understand very deeply how long things last in a pantry. And she would, think of things like, okay, I need to, store the sugar in a closet that's dark, and I need to put something in there, keep it dry so it doesn't get clumpy. Like, these are things that she would know.
Right.
So I focused first on the things that her past, like how she got there, and the things that she would know. And one of the big pieces was I don't know from guns. I am not a gun person.
Right.
So, one of my major pieces of research was hooking up with John Sanders, who was the props guy at that time. And he just walked me through guns. I mean, he gave me a bunch of pictures to put in my notebook. He talked to me about because I knew nothing. I was like, what is that? Is that a shotgun? He's like, that's a revolver. I'm like, fantastic. What kind is it? He's like, this is a machine gun. This is a submachine gun. This is an AR, and I was like, wow, okay. So that I would have the knowledge that Olivia would have. So because to me, when you on camera, the camera sees what you know, it sees your knowledge. Right. So I wanted knowledge, and that's where I started. And then I expounded so I was doing homework on set. Like Andy Lincoln kept popping by and going, he's so sweet. He was like, what are you doing? And I was like, and I felt like a dork, I was like, I'm doing my homework and my notebook. He's like, that's great. It's great. And he came by like a few hours later. He's like, what are you doing now? I'm like, I'm still doing the homework in my notebook, like a big dork, but he was wonderful. He was like, that's awesome. So that's where I started. And then for me, I want to know where everything I wear comes from, because Anne Mahoney, I know I can tell you where my glasses came from, my dress came from. And there was something about Olivia. She wears jewelry, which is a very unusual thing in the Apocalypse.
Yeah, I guess that is unusual.
She wears a lot of jewelry too. She wears like 4 bracelets. She wears several rings and earrings. That tells you she doesn't go out on a lot of runs, because nobody's looking to catch a bracelet on something and get bitten,
Yeah. That's what was, go ahead.
No. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say that was really what was interesting about the Alexandria storyline in the beginning, where you had like this group of like vets basically who have seen everything, and then this like normal community who's just trying to pretend like the apocalypse isn't happening, and trying to like make everything nice. And they're like, oh my gosh, so that like juxtaposition is so great. So hearing that bit about the jewelry is, I didn't even think about that.
Well, to me, it was very stunning because, by then I had watched some of the show to really get a feeling for it.
Right.
And there's not a lot of jewelry. People will have a token thing or two, but she was like 3 bracelets and some rings. And my feeling was, even though she's behind these walls, if she's wearing this stuff, it's meaningful to her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I wanted to know where it all came from.
Since we're on like an indefinite hiatus, we've been watching like sort of like iconic episodes. And this week we're watching JSS 602, where all the wolves come in and just slaughter everyone. I'm wondering if you could give us any tidbits of like what you remember from that episode, because it was pretty intense.
It was a lot of fun for me, actually, because I spent so much of the end of season 5 and the beginning of season 6 being very isolated with just the Alexandria people.
Right.
So it was fun to get to play with everyone a little bit more. One of my favorite things that happened on that shoot was when we were shooting in the armory for that episode, it was actually the size of a closet. Sometimes they'll have removable walls if they shoot it in a studio, or actually the space that you're looking at that looks like a tiny closet is actually quite large, but they just so that the camera has room to move around. But the armory that we had was actually a tiny room with this closet. And so when we did the turnaround with the camera from over my shoulder to, when we did the shot over Melissa's shoulder, I was in the closet, Melissa Carroll, in the closet. Yeah. I had like a sound guy, an assistant camera guy, and a boom mic guy in the closet with me. And we had to wait so long because we had the whole fight play out between Carol and the wolf, where she kills the wolf there in the armory. And then she hears me in the closet, and then the door opens. Well, we had been in there so long that a couple of takes, they opened the door and my glasses were totally fogged up with humidity. So you couldn't see my eyes at all. And a couple times Melissa just busted out laughing because she's like, I can't even, like your glasses are all fogged up. And, I was cracking up too. So that was fun. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. We actually had a take that we did that we were going to maybe keep that was kind of funny, which was, she opens the door and I'm like, don't shoot. And she's like, oh God, Olivia. And she kind of takes a minute. And then I closed the closet door back.
We're just like,
And the crew and like the director laughed. And he's like, yeah, it's really funny. He's like, but it's not going to fit in this episode. We got to we can't do it. But that was a blast. It was a lot of fun. And then the whole idea that this whole time Olivia's been running the armory and she doesn't even know how to shoot a gun. It's just hysterical to me.
Yeah. I want to skip forward to season 7 with the Negan storylines, which was very uncomfortable for Olivia, where he's just kind of parading you around sort of like a pet and putting his arm around you. And you're just like scared to death. What was that like acting alongside Jeffrey Dean Morgan in those scenes?
Well, what's nice is, I'm 5'8", which is basically an Amazon in the actress world. Like
really?
Oh yeah, actresses are they're slender and beautiful, so they look like they might be models, but they tend to be kind of wee. They tend to be like 5'4" and under. So I'm tall for an actress. So having someone like Jeffrey, who is a tall guy, a super tall guy, is fun. So just playing that, but also Jeffrey's super talented, so he has this complete ability to be Mr. Jokey. We did a lot of joking, him and I and Norman on set. A lot of joking. I grew up with all brothers, so it's just like, it's like
second nature.
Oh yeah. So a lot of joking, but then able to turn on the intimidation, quite easily. And as a woman who's lived as a woman my whole life, I can say that that's not something I'm unfamiliar with, being intimidated by big men.
Yeah, and with those scenes with Jeffrey as well, like he was so mean to you, his character was like, and Olivia cried after it. I was like, when they said cut, or is he like, I'm so sorry, or because he was being really insensitive.
Scott Gimple actually called me prior to when I got the script for I forget what episode it was on season 7, where he says, "Nice job putting the fat girl in charge of the pantry." Like Gimple called me and was like, I just want you to know that I'm sorry about that line, but Negan's an asshole. And so he says asshole things. He's like, but none of us think of you like that. But it just kind of shows everybody, what a misogynist he is, basically.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And I think just the rest of the time, Jeffrey is so lovely, and we joked around. It just felt like a big brother, little sister kind of relationship a little bit. So none of it really, that's my job as an actor, right?
Oh yeah. Sure.
To be, to be offended. And that stuff does hurt when people say it, right? But that's who Olivia is. And she's standing up. Olivia is much more of a mama bear than we actually got to see in the show. But so she's taking that job very, very seriously. And she's very protective of people and their food, right? She wants to make sure her people are not uncomfortable, not starving. And so, yeah, I think it hurts her deeply when he decides to use it as a way to make fun of her, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So, unfortunately, your character's storyline came to an end in season 7. As retribution for Rosita shooting at him, your character gets got, which was so unfair and so shocking. What do you remember from getting the call on that day?
Yeah, he was actually quite lovely about it. I want to say it was like more than a month and a half before I shot that episode.
Oh, okay.
So, but he called me, it was a Sunday. So when, Scott Gimble's name pops up on your phone on a Sunday morning, I just...
Yeah. You're like, oh God.
I looked at my husband and I went, I'm dead. I just... It's like, as soon as I saw his name pop up, I'm like, I'm dead. That's it. It's over.
Aww.
Well, I think it's one of those things like, Spencer purposely was not well liked. He's not written very sympathetically in the comic book or in the show. No. But by then, Olivia, I may not have been the most giant character on the whole show, but I was loved, and people look forward to seeing me and thought I was a good person. Like, I think Olivia was a genuinely good person. which spells doom for you in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I think her death, I think, is a good balance to Spencer going in such a gruesome way. And it's so shocking. Actually, Josh McDermott said to me, he said, I actually shouted out loud when I read the script and saw that you got shot because it was so shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And actually,
wild.
Andy Lincoln was not called to set that day. Am I remembering that correctly? Is that right? The day that I was going to die. And he came to set. Was that right? Am I getting it right? Because he doesn't come into the scene until later.
Yeah, he's like on a supply run. They have to like hide the guns or something, or they have to get something. Yeah, he doesn't come back till later.
Yeah, so we shot most of the beginning part of that scene where, they hold the knife, they cut Rosita's face and shoots me before, and Andy wasn't called that day, but he came. Oh, it was my last day, last day, because they rarely kill you and have that be your last day. They'll have you have one more day where you're not dead, so they'll actually shoot things a little bit out of order, so your last day isn't just the day that you actually get shot, which is kind of lovely if you think about it.
That's really nice.
So my very last day on set, when I was still alive and we were shooting some of the stuff with Negan in the house, Andy came to set and just say goodbye and to tell me I'd made an impact, and he had tears in his eyes. And I was like, dude, I was doing great. I was not crying. I was not upset. And then he showed up and that's him, that was him just across the board with everyone.
I've heard only lovely things about him. And I also heard that he's like very much in character. Like he stays in character even when he's like not like on, like maybe before a scene or after a scene. Is that true?
It's very true. He's just lovely to everyone. I mean, and I think the responsibility that takes to do that, he's not off very often. That's 5 days a week, 12-hour days at least, out in the sun most of the season. What it takes for an actor to carry a show the way he did, and to then still be so generous to every other actor on the set is, but that was my experience across the board with the Walking Dead people. I think, part of the reason the show is famous and popular is certainly because the source material is brilliant and it's something we can all relate to. But another reason is when you cast a bunch of people who aren't jerks, who love the work, who are happy to be there, it just creates this magic on set because everybody's just, no matter how brutal the circumstances are, is so thrilled to be doing the work that it makes it a joy.
Before we finish up, I heard you actually didn't get to do a death dinner because you had to record Sun Records.
Yeah, I was working on my last season of Walking Dead. It was kind of an embarrassment of riches. I'd like to be back there any day. I was working on the end of my time at Walking Dead. I was playing Gladys Presley on Sun Records, and that was 8 episodes, and I was in 7 of those, and that was shooting in Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah. And I was shooting Logan Lucky with Steven Soderbergh at the same time, like all that was happening all at once. So
since Walking Dead, if people hadn't heard from you since, I mean, it sounds like you're doing great. Like, sounds like you've had a lot of work and you're teaching and, killing it at being a parent. Like,
yeah, I'd like to be working more. I mean, I think that the nature of what we do is very cyclical, and things were just on a very big upswing for me right before the pandemic hit. Oh, so that's been disconcerting. But I do think, I think there's a series regular in my future. It's just a matter of where it's going to be and what it's going to be. And I'm looking forward to being a part of. I don't really want to carry my own show. I don't want like the Anne show. I really love playing secondary characters or like supporting roles. Sure. Those are the things I love. Those people.
You're fantastic at that. And those are the people who you kind of remember more sometimes, like they're the ones
when
who
I was on stage, I was a leading lady a lot. And I can tell you by the end of the play,
see that.
Everyone is sick of watching you, and it's your friend who comes in for 3 scenes and makes everybody laugh that they're like, I like that guy, So I like being that guy. I like doing those people, the ones who, but things are on an upswing now. And I did, have 2 movies coming out this year. So
see, you're killing it, Anne.
Thank you.
It sounds like, and when this whole thing is over and, you're definitely going to get that series regular thing for sure. I'm sure there's also going to be a lot of quarantine content.
Yeah. I love television too. I love working on films but the one I just recently did was a very, it was almost an indie style film. And I like those because they shoot fast. That's what I love. That's one of the reasons I love working on Walking Dead. Walking Dead shoots fast.
Really?
Except for obviously the big complicated fight scenes, those take longer, but in general, we're like this. And I love shooting like that. I don't want to, go over and over and over a scene. I want to come in and just jump and nail it. That's like the way I like to work. So
wasn't the Spencer Gut thing like a one take? Like,
oh yeah, we had
that was a complicated prop.
I think we did it twice.
Okay.
But it was, I mean, the time between to reset everything.
They're masters. I mean, that looked real. I mean, I have never seen anyone get cut open, but it looked like how you'd imagine it look,
It was gross. I remember when they were doing my, when I went to the makeup trailer, because they time everything.
Right.
Because they need to know how long it's going to take on the day so that they can kind of fit the shooting schedule around it to use their time wisely. That show was so smart about that. Yeah. And so I was in there and they put like the towel on you and they wipe your face down. I'm like, it's like a murder facial. This is wonderful. And then, and then they put stuff on in the blood. And then Greg comes in and like, I think a little more dark in there. And it's incredible. It's a great process.
Wow. That's so great. Well, Anne Mahoney, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me. I had such a fun time talking to you, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future. Tell the people where they can follow you on social media if they aren't already.
Yeah, you can find me on at Annie Moho on both Instagram and Twitter. It's ANNIEMOHO for Annie Mahoney, Annie Moho.
That is a phenomenal.
And if you want
to
listen to my podcast, oh, thanks. It's a nickname. If you want to listen to, I'm doing a podcast where I talk to other actors too, and you can find that on Apple. It's Peaky Podcast, PEEKY, Peaky Podcast.
Ooh, yes,
check that out too.
Support the podcast community. Absolutely. All right, Anne. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Of course. See ya. All right. We're now going to go into our final segment called Stray Arrows. These are some things that we noticed in the episode that didn't make it into another segment. Were you doing arrow sounds?
I was.
Nice. Alexandra, what are some stray arrows you got from JSS?
I forgot that there was a lot of Merritt Wever in this episode, and
so much. It's actually her first episode.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm a big, weirdly probably a weirdly large Merritt Wever fan. I used to watch Nurse Jackie, and she is so fucking funny on that show. She plays this new nurse, Zoe, who is essentially mentored by Jackie, but Jackie's like a drug addict, so it's complicated. And she's absolutely phenomenal in that. She is a brilliant, brilliant actress. She has incredible range, and she's been in... she was just in an HBO series called Run. She was in Lena Dunham's first movie that got her girls called Tiny Furniture. She just has this and then she's also on The Walking Dead, even though she's kind of more of an indie person. And then her Emmy speech was literally one sentence. She won an Emmy for Nurse Jackie, and she got up there and was like, "Thanks, I have to go." And
that was so weird, but amazing at the same time.
She's like, "Nope, thanks, won the award. This is uncomfortable." Sorry, I'm going on and on, but I loved the Tara, Denise, Eugene scene.
Yes.
Where Eugene's like, you're not a surgeon. Denise is like, are you a doctor?
Are you a doctor?
Seriously? Yeah. Their banter and chemistry was great.
I have had Merritt Wever energy, from The Walking Dead, or I guess I've had Denise energy, where it's where everyone is asking you to be a surgeon, and you're like, but I'm not a surgeon, and they're like, yeah, but you've been around surgeons, and you're just like, that doesn't make me qualified. I'm going to end up destroying this thing you want me to do, and they're like, just be a surgeon. Not getting too into that, but I can relate to that.
There is a comedic, you can see this through a comedic lens and direct it, where Eugene has this wonderful moment of telling Denise, I know you don't want to be a coward. And they do have this kind of moment, and Denise does end up operating on and killing Holly, or probably helping Holly to die. But it would have been funny if they had that just beautiful, heartrending moment, and then all of us then cut to 2 minutes later where Holly is just in 2 slabs on the floor, and Denise is like, "I told you, I wasn't a surgeon. I've told you.
I literally told you guys. I don't know what you want. I've opened her up, and now I don't know what to do. One of my stray arrows is, first of all, I'm just going to go through these really quick. Ron, as we discussed, doesn't deserve Jesse as a mom. He is your typical shitbag teenage son, and he is also a shitbag teenage son in This Is Us. And he leaves Kate, younger Kate, on the side of the road when a date goes wrong, and he gets angry, and he has like that incel energy, and it's just not great. And then bonus stray arrow is that you didn't mention Star Trek once this whole episode, and I think that's a first. So congratulations. I've now mentioned it and ruined it, but we'll see how well we'll do next week.
Star Trek doesn't ruin anything. More Star Trek is better.
And that wraps it up for this week's episode of Talk Dead to Me. That's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please continue to share with your friends, tell people about it, and we'll see you next time. As always, happy birthday, Nate.
Happy birthday, Nate. Happy birthday, Nate.
Was that your Woody?
Mm-hmm.
I think he would be like, happy birthday, Nate. Wait, really quick, Alexandra, do your best Woody.
Happy birthday, Nate.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I'm Woody. Happy birthday. That's totally something he would say.